Good evening and welcome to episode 61 of the Jacksonian. I am yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me as the host of the BIGTEN Huddle, the college huddle himself, J.R. Rhodes, as we'll be going over our take on what's going on in the Big Ten and college basketball and college football and much, much more. And let me tell you something, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
I'm doing good, Jackson. Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, thank you for coming on, man. And for those that didn't tune in on your first appearance on the Jet Sign from February 2024, shall I tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm running the BIGTEN Huddle over there. We got episodes pretty much every day, if not every other day, and so it's a good time. We're covering basketball and football. We got a podcast channel. You can catch all our content over there as well, and find us on Twitter, Instagram, all those. I guess it's X now. All those places.
There you go, man. Sometimes I call it Twitter, where it's just like I'll call it Twitter/ads. So
Right.
that, yeah, that way nobody's left out. So speaking of Big Ten basketball, I've been looking at Indiana. And it's almost like they've been stepping it up since Mike Woodson announced his retirement. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, they've really been doing a lot better. They were able to upset Michigan State, get a few other big time wins here and there. I think what Mike Woodson's doing now is he's just kind of playing more free. Or I guess coaching more free is the way you should put it. And he's just kind of doing what he always wishes he could have done. He didn't want to play the politics of this guy makes this much NIL money, so this guy has to play this much. I mean, when we saw in that Purdue game, which they won, he started Anthony Leo, Luke Goody, like guys that are not the most talented players on the team, but they're either from Indiana or have some kind of connection or passion toward Indiana that just really makes them interesting players to watch. And they're going to play so much harder. Not that the other guys don't play hard, but they had more invested into it emotionally, and Mike Woodson really leaned into that. And I mean, it worked out for him, so they were able to get the win in that one. It was really impressive.
Well, and I keep looking at UCLA and Purdue, and of course, there's a pre-recorded episode, so it's kind of like, oh, why did you not get this score? Why did you not get this game? Right? He's like, pre-recorded. Hello, so don't blame us. But in all seriousness, though, UCLA and Purdue, how are they looking this year for going into March Madness? Can they make like a surprise run or no?
I mean, Purdue is always gonna be good. Braden Smith has had a good year. He's kind of the star player on that team. They've lost four in a row at this point now, depending on people when people watch this, and so things are a little controversial, I guess you could say, in that locker room. They just had a players only meeting, it was called, I guess, the other day. And I guess Matt Painter met with each player individually and asked some questions and stuff. So, I mean, they're definitely taking things seriously. And I mean, Purdue's one of those teams that I say almost every year. It's like they could be out in the first round or they could go to the final four. Sometimes it just kind of depends on the matchup. And really, if Purdue runs into a team with big guards that are going to get physical with Braden Smith, I mean, just go ahead and give it to the other guys because Braden Smith, he's not, even though he is amazing, he's one of the best point guards in the nation. He is not going to be able to carry that team all by himself through a physical team with big guards. So some of it's matchup dependent, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. And then UCLA, I mean, this is a Mick Cronin team. Mick Cronin has put together a team where it's hard workers, it's guys that are going to grind it out. It's really impressive. They went on that losing streak. I think it was how many was it? Yeah, it's four in a row. At one point, they lost 5 of 6, I think it was, and things weren't looking good. But if you remember, that was also kind of when the wildfires were going around out in Southern California. So I think that probably impacted things a little bit. But I mean, since then, they've only lost 2 games to at Illinois and then Minnesota, which just seems to be the biggest anomaly in the Big Ten. They can beat teams that are better than them, but they can't beat teams they're supposed to be better than. It's really interesting, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the way it is. Mick Cronin, he's gone on runs before with teams like this, so I don't know if I'm going to predict it, but I could see UCLA being a 6 or a 7 seed and possibly making it to an Elite Eight, maybe a Final Four. We'll see.
That could be a possibility where it's like somebody will look at you like you got like 4 or 5 eyes, but really, truly, North Carolina State made the Final Four last year, and Kevin Keats was on the chopping block going into the start of the ACC tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And McCurtain is not on the chopping block anytime soon.
True.
The fans are definitely, frustrated at times. They were frustrated after that Illinois loss. And I mean, if we're being honest, Mick Cronin basketball is not exactly a fun brand of basketball to watch. It's
No.
very defensive minded. It's slow the game down, and you're not going to get a whole lot of high scoring games. They scored in the 70s a couple times. I think they scored 80 some against USC once or twice this year. But yeah, for the most part, this is not going to be your high flying, high scoring team. It's going to be built on defense and hard work and grit and toughness.
Well, and I've been watching Michigan State all season this year. It's been looking like they went from unranked to ranked, and it was looking like they were going on the path where Syracuse was in the last years of the Boeheim era. But it seems to me like Tom Izzo is able to adjust to any era that he's in. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean Tom Izzo's got a good team around him. Last year it was a little difficult with the way things were going, not having much of a front court, but this year he's really been able to deliver in that area. Jackson Kohler getting better and becoming more reliable has been really helpful. Carson Cooper has always been a strong defender. His offensive game has come along a little bit more this season, and then Xavier Booker, he's just kind of like the guy that can do anything you need for you. So he's a really nice piece to this, and they had that stretch where they lost 3 of 4 and they lost to USC and UCLA and things didn't look good. Well, guess what? They've won their last 4 games and 3 of them were on the road. So taking down Michigan, Maryland, Purdue, Illinois, some of the best teams in the Big Ten, they were able to take down. I mean, it's really impressive what Tom Izzo is doing, not just overall, but I mean, I think the last 8 minutes of that Illinois game, Illinois didn't score a single basket. I think the last 5 minutes of the Michigan game, Michigan didn't score a single basket. And like the last 6 minutes, something like that of the Maryland game, Maryland didn't score a single basket. So they're really ending games very well with defense, and it's helping propel them to the end of the game and being able to win either by a big margin or a small margin.
There we go. I mean, Michigan State. I mean, they look like a dark horse to get a 1 seed, but I mean, heck, they don't need a 1 seed. They'll do fine. They kind of look like a Final Four team anyhow.
Yeah, they're probably a 2 or a 3 seed, I would imagine, as long as they keep it up. Now, I mean, if they win out, we'll see. They could get there. Never say never, but I think they're probably more of a 2 or 3.
Oh yeah. I mean, I personally wouldn't care if I were a 1 seed or a 2 seed, just as long as I'm in the tournament. That's what matters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And now on to the football side of things. Ohio State is the reigning national champions in all of college football. How is that feeling, man?
You know me. I'm an Ohio State fan, born and raised. So although I do cover the Big Ten Huddle and I try to be fair to every single team, I do have a little bit more of an appreciation for my Buckeyes. And yeah, I mean it feels great. It was the hardest road I think any national champion has ever had to go on, in my opinion. Now that doesn't mean some other team won't have a hard road in the future, but when you look at the teams Ohio State had to beat this year, Oregon, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Indiana, I mean, Texas. I mean, all these teams, they beat like, I think it was 6 of the top 8 final teams.
There
They
you go.
beat them. And the only reason they didn't beat 2 of them was because they're one of them, and the other one lost in their first game of the playoffs and couldn't move on to play them. So it's pretty incredible what Ryan Day has done this season, especially with all the critics and everything else. I was one of them at one point. I mean, I'll say it. But he really seemed to rebound from that Michigan game when they were able to take down the Buckeyes in Columbus, and things looked really bleak at that point in time. But Ryan Day, I said it before, I'll say it again. He turned one of the worst days in Ohio State history into one of the best seasons in Ohio State history, and that's just pretty incredible.
There you go, man. I still love, like, my favorite game of that playoff path was that Tennessee victory. That's just my favorite one.
They were talking about that. The players were, I forget which player it was, but one of them said, "All we knew on that first drive, if we just got a first down, we'd never look back." And I don't think they ever did look back in the playoffs. I mean, they got out in front of it, they went crazy, and I don't think they ever trailed other than in that Notre Dame game. I don't think they
Yeah,
ever trailed. They trailed at the very beginning because Notre Dame scored on that first drive, but after that, they never trailed again. Pretty incredible.
there you go, man. Because I mean, it's like first quarter. That's pretty much it. First quarter of the Natty. But now that Penn State's taking Jim Knowles, like, could we see Penn State make that long-awaited jump, or could we see something similar to kind of like with the Buckeyes where they lost to Michigan, like Penn State lose to Ohio State yet again? Everybody's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Then Penn State gets in the playoffs. Could we see Penn State be similar to what Ohio State did in 2024 for 2025?
I've said, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of dissing, Penn State and saying, "Oh, well, James Franklin will never win it all." And I tell them all the time, I say, people said the same thing about Ryan Day.
And
Can
Jim
James
Harbaugh.
Yeah, and Jim Harbaugh as well. So, if Ryan Day was able to do it just last season, why not James Franklin? He's done a phenomenal job of putting a great staff together. He's done a great job of keeping his players there. Probably would have liked to have Abdul Carter and Jalen Reed stay, but that's okay. He's still got Wheatley. He's still got some other guys. Or Wheatley stayed, right? I think, yeah, Zakari Wheatley. He stayed, and so they still have some other good players on that defense. And bringing in Jim Knowles, I mean, James Franklin has done a really, really good job of assembling a staff here. All he has to do is just manage the game. And I said it in the loss to Notre Dame. I said the biggest issue in that game was James Franklin didn't manage the game properly. He should have known I have the better team on the field. I have the better team. I don't need to put my quarterback in a bad situation because our receivers haven't caught a single ball all game. Just run the ball, run out the clock, get to overtime, lean on your defense because Notre Dame's not scoring. Your defense is too good, right? Lean on your defense, kick the field goal, and move on. I mean, Penn State should have won that game 27-24. That should have been what happened, but they didn't
Oh, yeah.
because James Franklin tried to move the ball down the field late when his receivers hadn't caught a ball all game, and it was just like, what are you doing here, James?
I mean, like the people that criticize James Franklin, it's like they've forgotten that he was named the head coach in waiting at Maryland for a reason. And then he won at Vanderbilt, got them to bowl games, got them to bowl games, mind you, like 2 straight 9-win seasons. You don't see that every year at Vandy.
No, you don't. And I was doing an episode on the OHIO podcast the other day, where we were ranking our top 10 head coaches, and I actually ranked James Franklin right next to Steve Sarkisian. And a lot of people had an issue with it. They were saying, "Oh, Steve Sarkisian's a better coach, and he did that, he did this," and I said, "Steve Sarkisian's just James Franklin." I said they are the same
Hmm.
person. I said both of them have made it to the playoffs and lost near the end. Steve Sarkisian made it last year or the year before last year. That's the only difference, right?
Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian failed at his stops before Texas. James
Yeah.
Franklin at his stops before Penn State succeeded. So, I mean, you take the little bit more success Texas has had, which has not been much. It's not like they've won, the SEC or anything like that. And you take the success James Franklin had at Vanderbilt versus the failure that Steve Sarkisian had at USC. As far as I'm concerned, these two guys are the same coaches. And if you told me you'd rather have James Franklin over Steve Sarkisian, I wouldn't argue too much with you. If you told me you wanted Steve Sarkisian over James Franklin, I wouldn't argue too much with you because at the end of the day, both of them are looking for that first title. They might get it this season. They might not. We'll see. But definitely pressure on both of them, I think, this season.
There's one game I always look back at on Steve Sarkisian's career, and this was his third game as head coach, as basically in the first year of Washington for 2009. At that time, Washington was coming off a 0-12 year, and USC, of course, coming off a big win over Ohio State. And then Washington does the unexpected, pulls off the upset over USC. And it was just unprecedented. Like, you would think it was Oregon State upset Pete Carroll USC, but there goes Washington upsetting USC in '09. And that's like a testament to show that Sarkisian can do a pretty good job. He's been pretty fantastic at Texas.
Yeah, I mean he can do a good job. He has to make it to the end and get over the hump, which is kind of like the point I made. Same thing James Franklin needs to do. We'll see. We'll see if he can do it this season. We'll see if James Franklin can do it this season. I like Penn State's odds. I'm not going to go out and pick them to win the national championship, most likely, but I wouldn't have argued with people if they didn't pick Ohio State to win the national championship last year because I felt like some of the Ryan Day criticism was valid, just like I feel like some of the James Franklin criticism is valid too. I just, I just tell people don't say he can't do it because any coach can do it. They just have to have the right luck. They have to have the right circumstances. Things have to go the right way. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, Jackson, is how much luck really is involved with this kind of stuff. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
hear Ohio State talk about how they knew they were going to win after that Jack Sawyer scoop and score against Texas. I mean, there there was just a sentiment with that team that's like the balls never really bounced the right way for us. In that moment, it did, and it was kind of like they thought to themselves, the ball is finally bouncing our way. So if we can capitalize on this and play solid football, we can go and win it all. And I think that's what you're gonna have to be for Penn State to win it all this year. You're gonna need that moment where the ball just bounces your way and you're able to capitalize on it and win it all. We'll see if they can do it.
Agreed. And now we've got like a new story from yesterday. And I was watching a little bit of the Triple Option podcast with Urban Meyer, Mark Ingram. I forget the other guy that was with him, but
Rob Stone.
Rob Stone, thank you.
Hmm.
And Matt Rule says not too crazy about having a tough non-con schedule because like you're having 9 Big Ten games, but I'm just like I'm not too crazy about Nebraska cutting off that home and home with Tennessee. But as long as they keep the Oklahoma home and home for 2029, 2030, I'm happy. I'm at this point. But does it kind of quell those rumors that well, there's going to be a Big Ten SEC takeover or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be at some point. There's just too much money in those two leagues. There's too many big brands that college football is kind of known around. The ACC has a couple: Florida State, Clemson, Miami. That they can kind of lean on. The Big 12 doesn't really have any. I mean, their big Texas programs have left at this point. Utah, I guess, BYU is a growing brand in college football, but they don't really have anybody that is on that national level where it's like you got to pay attention to them every single year. And so, I mean, probably their biggest brand right now is Colorado, and that's just because they have Deion Sanders. That's not really because of the Colorado brand. That's because of the Deion Sanders brand. So they're going to remain relevant with him as long as he's there. But, you know, I think I don't know if the Nebraska canceling the thing with Tennessee had anything to do with the two conferences getting together at some point. I do think they'll probably do some kind of SEC Big Ten, challenge or something like that. There's just too much money involved for that not to happen. And if we've learned anything over the past few years of college football, it's if there's money to be had, the TV companies and the TV networks will make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like the TV companies are not really caring about like some of the past rivalries that were taken away. I don't think they're really thinking about it. I mean, it's like, do you know anybody that looks forward to Penn State Rutgers on rivalry week? Penn State, Maryland, Michigan State. You ever hear people say, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have some Thanksgiving leftovers and watch Penn State, Michigan State"? Said nobody ever.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, Jackson, probably one of my hottest takes, and some people like it and some people don't, is I say if you don't play every year, you're not a rivalry. You got to play every single year if you want to be a rivalry, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So Oklahoma State, they killed that. As far as I'm concerned, Texas and Texas A&M is trying to bring it back, and I think that's great. But
It's
as
great
far
for
as I'm,
college football.
yeah, I mean, rivalries is what this sport is built on in a lot of ways. I mean, it's one of the many traditions that we love, but I just you know, I think we have to keep playing them. If we're going to be rivalries, if we're going to keep that intensity, you got to keep playing them. And if you don't,
Right.
then they're going to go away. Look at Michigan and and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You had Michigan fans rooting for Notre Dame in the national championship against Ohio State
Mhm.
because they hate Ohio State more. Obviously it's a big rivalry and it's one of the biggest in all of sports, but part of the reason for that is because Michigan doesn't play Notre Dame anymore. They don't have those fans going at it as much as they used to. And so it's just kind of the way it is. So um, I think it stinks to lose the rivalries. I think it stinks to lose big out of conference games, but I'll also say I understand where Nebraska's coming from. The 9 game Big Ten schedule is something that the SEC needs to look at. And I know there's some people out there that will say an 8 game SEC schedule is harder than a 9 game Big Ten schedule. I say bull. Like it just that's not the same. I don't think it's harder in my opinion. 9 games is harder than 8 games. And the Big Ten has good teams. It's not like they're just a bunch of cupcakes in a conference. They have good teams. So as far as I'm concerned, and also that that is one less guaranteed loss for half of your conference. You play 8 conference games, you're guaranteed half of your conference will lose 4 games, right?
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed another game for your conference to lose. So I don't necessarily go at the SEC and talk about like how terrible they are. I just want the same. I want the Big Ten and the SEC to be on the same level because I think it's better for the sport. I think it's better overall, and I think at the end of the day, we want to see Ohio State play Alabama. We want to see Georgia play, Oregon. We want to see these different kind of matchups because we love them and we cherish them in the playoffs. Let's see them in the out of conference too. Be a whole lot more fun.
I wish Penn State would have Pittsburgh annually, and I wish they would have like another Power Four opponent on their non-con. Like that would be pretty cool. But it's just like, oh well.
Yeah, I agree with the Pit. I think that would be a really fun rivalry to renew.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like nobody's gonna get excited about Penn State Rutgers. Put Penn State Pittsburgh on Black Friday every year, and people will pull up a chair. They will
Oh
pull
yeah.
up a chair. They will eat their Thanksgiving leftovers. Tune in for that one.
Hey, just put it on Thanksgiving. Put it on Thanksgiving. Eat,
Exactly.
eat your Thanksgiving. Not leftovers. The first
Dan
ones.
Marino is crying tears over this game going away, and you don't see Dan Marino crying.
It's true. It's true.
Like Franco Harris is crying in his grave over that game being taken away.
I love it.
But and that brings me to another point. USC Notre Dame. Now the
Mm.
contract expires in 2026. And the USC athletic director the other day, Jen Cohen, because like I talked about this on The Voice College Football a few times. I talked about when I called the Paul Feinbaum show a week ago. When I'm hearing things like in an ideal world, that means you're wanting to get rid of the game. I think it's bad for the sport of college football if you're taking away the Notre Dame USC rivalry because it's like, and some people have said Notre Dame just be like everybody else, or USC, you should have thought about that before joining the Big Ten. Me personally, I really don't care. Just play every year. Notre Dame USC should play every year. But what do you think? What do you think about this contract kerfuffle going on?
Yeah, we did a segment on it on the Big Ten Huddle, and I kind of preface it as could this be something that leads Notre Dame to joining the Big Ten? And it wasn't so much that they would join the Big Ten just because they play USC, but the idea of what if Notre Dame isn't playing any of their rivals anymore because the Big Ten says we have 9 conference games. Why would we play another one? If every Big Ten's team starts taking this, this idea on like Nebraska has and says we're not playing another non-conference game against a Power Four opponent. Notre Dame's going to be left out there. They're not going to have the option to play Michigan. Some people call Ohio State and Notre Dame a rivalry, so they won't have the option to play Ohio State. I still think Ohio State's going to continue to play big out of conference games. I don't think every
Obviously.
team's going to do it, but I do think that there will be some teams that follow suit. So in 2027, if we don't have USC Notre Dame and we don't have Notre Dame Michigan and we don't have Notre Dame facing any Big Ten teams, I think number one, it's going to be bad for the sport, and I think Notre Dame's going to try to figure out a way to possibly get into the Big Ten so they can play those rivalries.
Oh
And
yeah.
number two, the other thing people don't always think about, Notre Dame's TV partner is NBC. Who is NBC TV
Yeah.
partners with now too? The Big
Yes.
Ten.
NBC's buddies with the Big Ten and Notre Dame. And I guarantee you they're looking at the ratings for Notre Dame, Purdue, and Notre Dame, Florida State. The ratings were higher for Notre Dame, Purdue than they were Notre Dame, Florida State. Now, I mean, a lot of it was people were watching Alabama, LSU more than like Notre Dame, Florida State. I mean, who wants to watch a pitiful Florida State team?
Right.
It's like,
I
I,
think honest or go ahead.
I won't like vent about Florida State too much. I've been about them too much.
I hear you. I hear you. I do think at some point we could see some of these TV companies really go after trying to kind of get a rivalry of their own that they can kind of market as theirs because it is good money and that is one of the biggest money makers in college football is seeing good rivalry games. So you could see Auburn, Alabama go to ESPN or ABC, and that's kind of their big rivalry game, right? You could see Ohio State, Michigan being kind of Fox's big rivalry game. You could see Notre Dame, USC becoming NBC's big rivalry game. Who does CBS get? Does CBS go and get, I don't know, name your other big rivalry game that has something to do with the Big Ten, and they play at 3:30 on rivalry, week or
Oh,
something
they're
like
gonna be
that.
mad if they have to air Penn State versus whoever.
I think they did air, was it Iowa, Wisconsin,
They aired Minnesota, Wisconsin on Black
Minnesota,
Friday
Wisconsin?
last year. Iowa,
Okay.
Nebraska was on NBC.
Yeah. Okay. Which Minnesota, Wisconsin, that's a good game. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
from Wisconsin, they're kind of down right now. But if Luke Fickle gets it cooking, that could be another good game to watch every single year.
there you go. And of course, they did air Iowa, Nebraska in 2023 in the first year of the TV contract with CBS.
And that's another great rivalry game to air. So
Man, you know it's Black Friday when you see Nebraska, Iowa.
yes, it is.
And before we wrap up this episode, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to episode 61 of the Jacksonian. And JR, thank you so much for coming on in. And before we sign off, and for those who want to learn more about the Big Ten or Ohio State athletics and stuff like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me over at the Big Ten Huddle. Everything Big Ten over there. You can find me at Scarlet and Game. I write over there. The OHIO podcast once a week. I actually appear on Locked On Illini once or twice a week as well over there with Sonny Verma. He does a great job. And I also appear on ESPN Radio out in Iowa once a week as well to do some Big Ten basketball talk. So I don't know if you can stream that one online or not, but if you live in Iowa and you want to listen, I think it's about 5 o'clock every Monday. You can tune in and listen to me talk about basketball. So a lot of different places trying to get my name out there as much as I can. I appreciate you having me on, Jackson.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. It was fun one. And with that being said, we thank you all for tuning in to the Jacksonian episode 61 right here. And for those that want to see more episodes of the Jacksonian, check me out on Jackson Johnson 979 on YouTube. And also check me out on Alabama with the Voice College Football, where I get together with Coach Johnny Burtz Monday afternoons at 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Although we could be changing times for Mondays, like 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And also Thursday nights, Jeffrey at Only Talk Sports and I take your calls at 9 p.m. Central Time on the Alabama Call-In Show. And for more updates on what's going on Alabama with the Voice of College Football and on the Jacksonian and on my collaborations with Austin Williams from Sports Talk with Austin and Will and D at the Buzzer Beater, come on in to Jackson VOCFB on @Twitter and Instagram and threads at Jackson Johnson 543908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss no video or an episode whatsoever. And we will see you soon. Take care, everybody.